So we set up these three regional nurseries: Upper Keys, Middle Keys, Lower Keys. Each has a range of areas they work in, and we have teams working in each of those nurseries. Our vision eventually would be to have contractors working and managing each set of nurseries and the restoration work that would take place there. The Upper Keys nursery is my responsibility. The Middle Keys nursery is Dynasty's responsibility, and the Lower Keys nursery is Mike's responsibility, or somebody down there. Each nursery is going to be a replicate of the other nurseries. And so the idea is that if we have the corals represented in all three nurseries and a storm came by or a disease or some other weird event, it probably wouldn't wipe out all three nurseries, and we would use corals from the nursery that didn't get affected to populate the other nurseries and get started again. So in the nursery, the corals are growing either on trees or on ropes. The tree nurseries require a bit of maintenance. One of the things that has to be done on a fairly regular basis, especially when the corals are new, is to clean the monofilament that the corals are hanging from. And we usually use it's actually a grout brush. It looks like a big toothbrush, but it's a grout brush. And we just hold on to the coral, turn it back and forth rapidly, moving the brush up and down the mono and clean it off. That's kind of the basic task that everybody needs to do. We also have to occasionally clean the ropes that the trees are held on with, the tether ropes we call them, and that's can be done with a brush or a chisel or any kind of thing really. The other corals, there's some of the corals are like brain corals and star corals and other corals like that are mounted on credit cards. We also use a grout brush or a dish brush to get in there and clean the algae and things like that off from around the coral. You have to be very careful. That's kind of a higher end skill that people can master. But cleaning the gook off of the corals really helps them to grow faster and grow without fighting off algae and fire coral and things like that. We still have corals growing in our nursery on trees, elkhorn and staghorn coral and a few others, but we've migrated to this idea of growing them on a vertical line, a vertical rope nursery. And what happens is the corals, we start with a small fragment, whether it's staghorn, elkhorn, or it could be another coral, and we stick that inside the rope. We untwist the rope, stick the coral inside there, let the rope twist back onto it. And eventually the coral will grow up and down the rope, and it'll meet the coral on the top that's growing down and the coral on the bottom that's growing up. And eventually the whole rope will be covered with coral, and there will be no cleaning that'll need to take place. Bamboo is one of the nursery structures we've been experimenting with, one of the materials. And the beauty of bamboo is it's strong and it holds up for a couple of years, but it'll eventually rot and fall away, which is what we want. We want something that'll last for a year or two, whether it's in the nursery holding corals or we put it on the reef. We kind of want that to be there for a little while, but then we want it to dissolve and go away. So we're using bamboo rods where we get large fragments of coral, whether they're staghorn or elkhorn coral, and we cable tie it to the bamboo rod. The coral will wrap itself around the cable tie and the bamboo rod within a year, and all you'll see is coral. It'll be completely, the bamboo and the cable tie will be completely encapsulated by coral. When we go to outplant on the reef, we just take the whole structure out and we wrap it around things if it's a flexible structure, or we lay it on the ground if it's a solid bamboo rod. And it's just so much easier to handle and deal with these corals rather than dealing with a bunch of little pieces. So the final goal of all the work we're doing at the nursery and working with volunteers is to get corals onto the reef. And this isn't rocket science. This is not something that you have to have a PhD to do. It really is just a matter of cleaning the bottom, preparing it for a coral, and then using maybe an adhesive. We use a two-part epoxy a lot of times, and putting the adhesive down and putting the coral right there. It's really not hard at all, and this is something that volunteers have done with me for 20 years now, and there's no reason why we can't have volunteers being the major part of outplanting our corals. So Mike and I started this because we saw the need and we're passionate about this, but we also recognize that we're not going to be able to run it forever, and we don't really want to run this forever. We want to bring in and train qualified people to take over what we started. We want to build a strong organization with with good infrastructure and good governance, but then we want to train people to do this with us and then eventually turn it over to them. So this is not our legacy is building something to give away, not to keep onto it. So we wanted to thank the United Way for giving all of us this opportunity to fund our projects and our passions, and we hope that you'll see our passion and our vision and see that we're worthy of being funded. But thank you for recognizing the needs here in the Florida Keys and stepping up to the plate to try to do something about it.